The universe really has a twisted sense of humor. One day you wake up with a hangover, swearing at the ceiling fan in your cheap apartment, and the next you're the reluctant owner of a cafe that somehow blows up on TikTok. I wasn't supposed to be here. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near successful. But life had shoved me into this corner with a steaming cup of espresso and a neon sign flashing my name on Main Street. And just when I thought maybe, just maybe, I was finally standing on my own 2 feet, he walked in. Daniel Hayes. My first love. My first heartbreak. My stupid, beautiful ex who once promised me the world and then left me with nothing but the pieces. And now he was standing at the counter of my cafe, sliding a job application across the polished wood as if this was some sick joke. Still brewing weak coffee, I see, he said, voice calm but his eyes betraying a storm. Still acting like you own the room when you barely pay rent, I shot back, though my hand shook as I grabbed the paper. This was not how things were supposed to go. I had imagined success looking glamorous, effortless. Me in a crisp apron, customers lining up for my latte art, the air buzzing with soft jazz. Instead, I was running on 3 hours of sleep, juggling suppliers who thought late deliveries were funny, and now my past, the one thing I had buried deep, was standing right in front of me asking for a damn job. But here's the thing about small towns in America. You can't escape your past. Not when everyone knows everyone. And gossip spreads faster than spilled coffee on linoleum floors. Hiring him wasn't just a bad idea, it was suicidal. Yet rejecting him meant reopening a wound I'd been pretending was scar tissue. Daniel leaned forward, his smile infuriatingly confident, like he knew exactly what he was doing. Give me a chance. Unless, of course, you're afraid you'll still fall for me. God help me, maybe I already had. I should explain how I even got here. The cafe wasn't originally mine. It belonged to my Aunt Marjorie, the eccentric woman who baked pies like they were weapons of mass destruction and collected ceramic cats like they were going extinct. When she passed, she left the cafe to me in her will, probably because no one else in the family wanted the responsibility. First, I thought I'd sell it. But then, on a whim, maybe out of spite for everyone who doubted me, I decided to run it. One TikTok video of me messing up latte art went viral, the cafe turned into a local sensation, and suddenly I had lines out the door and influencers tagging the place like it was Disneyland. And now I had Daniel. He wasn't supposed to come back. Not after what happened between us. The fights. The nights we slept with our backs turned. Words unsaid choking the air. The morning he left without goodbye. But life apparently wanted me to suffer in high definition. The first week with him as an employee was hell. I put him on dish duty, thinking maybe the endless stream of mugs and plates would break his spirit. But of course, Daniel turned it into a game. Flirting with the customers, making them laugh, acting like he owned the place. And damn it, people loved him. He had always had that charm, the kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He used it on me once, back when we were both dumb college kids sharing a mattress too small for 2 bodies and too many dreams. I hated how easily he could slip back into that role, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. One night, after closing, I found him sitting on the counter, sipping a leftover caramel latte like it belonged to him. "You're reckless," I snapped, wiping down the espresso machine. "And you're uptight," he replied smoothly. "But we balance each other out. Always have." I froze, cloth in hand, because that was exactly the kind of line that used to make me melt. "But not anymore, right? Don't play this game with me," I muttered. "Who said it's a game?" he asked, his eyes softening for the first time in years. And just like that, the walls I had built around my heart started to crack. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that love doesn't survive on nostalgia alone. especially not in a small town where everyone had an opinion. The whispers started almost immediately. Did you hear? The cafe owner hired his ex. Guess some people never learn. Bet they'll crash and burn again. Every word felt like a stone thrown at me. And Daniel, damn him, acted like he didn't care. Maybe he didn't. Or maybe he cared too much and was just better at hiding it. But then came the night everything shifted. It was raining hard, the kind of American summer storm that drenches you to the bone in seconds. I stayed late to close up, but when I turned around, Daniel was still there, dripping wet, hair plastered to his forehead. "Why are you still here?" I asked, annoyed but also worried. "Because I had nowhere else to go," he admitted quietly. And that was the moment I realized something terrifying. Maybe I wasn't the only one who had been broken by our past. That night, we sat on the cafe floor, the storm rattling the windows, and for the first time in years we talked, really talked, about what went wrong, about what we lost, about what we still wanted, even if we were too scared to admit it. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. And as he leaned against me, head resting on my shoulder, I wondered if maybe the universe's cruel sense of humor wasn't cruelty at all. Maybe it was giving me a second chance. That's when I realized the hardest part wasn't deciding whether to let Daniel back into my life. The hardest part was admitting I had never let him go. The storm passed, but it left something behind. Not just in the air, heavy with the smell of wet pavement and coffee grounds, but between us, something raw, something fragile. For days after that night, I found myself watching Daniel more closely, the way his smile lingered a fraction too long when customers laughed at his jokes, the way his hands shook slightly when he thought no one was looking, the way he sometimes stayed behind after shifts, staring at the shelves of coffee beans as if they held answers to questions he couldn't ask. It wasn't the Daniel I remembered. The old Daniel had been untouchable, cocky, fearless, always 2 steps ahead of the world. This version carried shadows under his eyes and secrets in his silence. And I hated that I wanted to know every single one of them. The cafe, meanwhile, was exploding. A food blogger with 500,000 followers dropped by one afternoon, filmed a 30-second clip of my latte art, and suddenly we were trending again. People came not just for the coffee, but for the ambience. They liked the story of a small-town guy turning a rundown cafe into a success. They liked the cozy mismatched chairs, the string lights Aunt Marjorie had hung years ago, the smell of cinnamon rolls in the morning. But more than that, they liked us. Or rather, the idea of us. The regulars noticed the way Daniel teased me when I messed up orders, the way I glared at him but secretly fought back a smile. They noticed the sparks, the tension, the unspoken history. And in a town where gossip spread like wildfire, it didn't take long before the cafe with the ex-lovers became the narrative. Some people adored it. Others whispered, "He'll just break his heart again. It's pathetic, letting the past back in. Doesn't he realize he deserves better?" Every word made me flinch, even when I pretended not to hear, because they weren't entirely wrong. One evening, as I was closing up, I found Daniel sitting outside on the steps, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. "You don't smoke," I said, frowning. He smirked, exhaling into the night. "I don't, but sometimes it feels like I should." There was something reckless in his eyes, something dangerous. I sat down beside him, the air cool against my damp shirt. "You're hiding something," I said quietly. He didn't deny it, didn't even look surprised. Instead, he flicked the cigarette into the gutter, watching the ember fade. "And if I am? Then tell me," I pressed, Stop acting like I'm a stranger. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a sigh that sounded older than him, he muttered, "Because I don't want you to look at me the way you used to, like I was everything. I don't deserve it anymore." The words hit me like a punch. "Daniel." But before I could say more, he stood, brushing off his jeans. "Forget it. It doesn't matter." He walked away, leaving me with nothing but the echo of my own heartbeat. The days blurred after that. We worked side by side, pretending everything was fine, pretending we weren't unraveling, pretending the past wasn't clawing its way back into the present. And then it happened. A woman came into the cafe one morning, mid-30s, polished suit, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. She asked for Daniel by name. The moment he saw her, his face drained of color. "Rebecca," he whispered. The cafe was buzzing with customers, but I swear the whole place went silent. "Daniel Hayes," she said, her voice cool, professional, laced with disappointment. "You've been ignoring my calls." "Not here," he muttered, glancing at me like a guilty child. I didn't know what to feel. Confused, angry, afraid. Who was she? "Who is this?" I demanded, sharper than I intended. Rebecca looked me up and down, unimpressed. "And you are his boss," I snapped. "And his—" I stopped myself before saying too much. "His past?" Daniel cut in, his tone cold, as if slicing through the moment before it could unravel further. Something inside me cracked. Rebecca gave a thin smile. "How fitting. Well, Daniel, you can't run forever. We'll talk soon." She left, her heels clicking against the pavement, leaving behind a silence thick enough to choke on. I turned to him, anger boiling in my chest. "What the hell was that?" "Nothing," he said too quickly. "Don't lie to me," I exploded, slamming the register shut. "Not after everything. Not after you came back here and—" My voice broke, and made me believe there was still something left. For the first time, Daniel looked scared. Not of me, but of himself. "I can't tell you," he whispered. "Then maybe you don't belong here," I spat. The look on his face, hurt, betrayal, guilt, nearly undid me. But I didn't stop him when he walked out. Couldn't. The cafe felt emptier without him. Customers asked where he was, and I lied. Sick, busy, taking time off. But inside, I knew the truth. I had pushed him away, again. Nights were the worst. I'd sit in the back room, staring at the faint glow of the espresso machine, and wonder if I had just thrown away the only person who ever truly knew me. But pride is a cruel master, and mine was ironclad. Until Rebecca came back. It was late evening when she returned, catching me alone as I stacked chairs. "You care about him," she said flatly. I glared. "What do you want?" "Daniel's in trouble," she replied simply. "And he's too damn stubborn to admit it." My heart twisted. What kind of trouble? The kind that doesn't just go away. The kind that ruins people. Her eyes softened, just barely. "He came back here for a reason. He wanted to prove something to himself, to you. But he's drowning. And if you don't pull him out, he'll go under for good." I didn't know whether to trust her, but something in her tone, in the weight behind her words, made me believe. I closed my eyes, running a hand through my hair. "Where is he?" She slipped a card onto the counter. "Warehouse on the edge of town. Tonight." And just like that, she was gone. I should have walked away. I should have stayed in my safe little cafe, serving lattes to smiling strangers. But love isn't safe. It's reckless. It's dangerous. It's standing in the rain outside a crumbling warehouse at midnight, heart pounding, praying you're not too late. I pushed the door open and found him. Daniel, cornered by two men, voices low and threatening. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, his shoulders tense, his jaw tight. And in that moment I knew the truth. Whatever he was caught up in, whatever secrets he carried, none of it mattered, because I still loved him. And I wasn't going to let him drown. The sound of my footsteps echoed across the warehouse floor, loud enough to make the men turn their heads. Their eyes, sharp, calculating, locked onto me as if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. "Get out of here," Daniel hissed, his voice low and strained. "Eli, you shouldn't be here." But I couldn't move. Not when I saw him like that. Trapped, desperate, broken in a way I had never seen before. One of the men, tall with a scar cutting across his cheek, smirked. Well, who's this? Another debt collector? Or just your knight in shining armor?" Daniel's fists clenched. "Leave him out of this. This is between me and you." I stepped closer, heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. "If it involves you, it involves me." The scarred man chuckled darkly. "Cute. He thinks this is about love." His partner, stockier and meaner looking, crossed his arms. "Daniel owes us. He ran out when things got messy, and now he thinks he can just hide in some cozy little cafe." His eyes narrowed at me. "Guess he didn't tell you everything." I glanced at Daniel, waiting for him to deny it. But he didn't. His silence said more than words ever could. My stomach dropped. The truth came out in fragments, torn from Daniel's throat as if each syllable was a wound. He had left me back then not just because we were falling apart, but because he had gotten involved with people who promised him quick money. It started small, helping with deliveries, looking the other way, telling himself it was harmless. But it spiraled fast. By the time he realized what he was in, he was already in too deep. And when he tried to pull out, they didn't let him. That's why he vanished. That's why he left without goodbye. Because staying with me would have dragged me down too. I felt the weight of every moment we'd spent apart crash onto my shoulders. All those nights I cursed him for abandoning me. All those mornings I woke up empty. It wasn't because he stopped loving me. It was because he thought walking away was the only way to keep me safe. But now he was here, and so was I, and I wasn't leaving. The men advanced, their shadows stretching long across the cracked concrete. "You have two options, Hayes," Scarface said smoothly. "You pay what you owe or you work it off. Either way, you're ours." "No," I snapped before I could stop myself. "He's not yours. He's not anyone's." The taller man laughed, a low sound that chilled me. "Then maybe you're the one who pays." For a moment, everything blurred. The thunder outside, the pounding in my ears, Daniel's sharp intake of breath. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe this was how it ended. But Daniel moved before I could. He stepped in front of me, his body a shield, his voice steady despite the tremor I could hear beneath it. "You'll have to go through me first." The standoff broke when Rebecca appeared in the doorway, flanked by two uniformed officers. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Enough!" The men cursed under their breath, but it was too late. The police swarmed in, handcuffs clicking, orders shouted. Within minutes, the warehouse was cleared. The danger dissolved into the night. Daniel stood frozen, shoulders hunched, eyes locked on the ground. I reached for him, but he pulled away. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. "And let you face this alone? Forget it." His gaze lifted, pain etched deep in his expression. "You don't understand. Being with me, it ruins people. I've ruined you once. I can't do it again." Something inside me snapped. Not with anger, but with clarity. "No, Daniel. You didn't ruin me. You broke me, yeah. But you didn't destroy me." And if you think I'm going to stand here and watch you walk away again, you're wrong. I don't care what you've done. I care about who you are. And I'm not giving up on you. His lips parted, as if to argue, but no words came. Just silence. Just tears glistening in eyes that had always been too proud to show weakness. For the first time, he let me pull him into my arms. And for the first time, I realized that maybe love wasn't about saving someone from their demons. It was about standing beside them while they fought. The aftermath was messy. Rebecca explained everything back at the station. She wasn't just some lawyer or businesswoman, but Daniel's sister, half-sister, technically. She had been trying to pull him out of this mess for years, but he kept running, too ashamed to admit the truth. The debts would take time to resolve. The charges against the men would stick, but there were still consequences Daniel had to face. He didn't get to just walk away clean. But for once, he wasn't alone. I visited him every day. I brought him coffee the same way I used to back when we were college kids. I sat with him in silence when he couldn't talk, and I argued with him when he tried to push me away. Slowly, the walls came down. Slowly, the boy who had once laughed so easily began to laugh again. Slowly, we found pieces of us we thought had been lost forever. But the town didn't forgive so easily. Some customers stopped coming, muttering about how the cafe was tainted now. Others came out of curiosity, wanting to see the scandal for themselves. The whispers grew louder, sharper, more cruel. I thought about giving up. Selling the cafe, leaving town, starting over somewhere no one knew our names. But then, one morning, I walked in to find Daniel behind the counter. Apron on, hair still damp from the shower. He was humming softly, making coffee like it was the only thing that mattered in the world. When he saw me, he smiled soft, genuine, unguarded. "This place saved me once," he said quietly. "Let's not run from it. Let's make it ours." And for the first time in years, I believed him. So we stayed. We rebuilt. We fought back with every latte, every laugh, every late-night cleanup shift. And though the whispers never fully died, something stronger grew louder. Us. Because in the end, love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, again and again, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when the world tells you to walk away. And that's exactly what we did. The town didn't let us breathe. Every time I stepped out of the cafe, I could feel the eyes. At the grocery store, at the gas station, even just walking down Main Street, whispers trailed me like shadows. They weren't always cruel. Some were curious, others pitying. But all of them reminded me of the same truth. In this town, forgiveness was rationed, and second chances were rare. Daniel took it harder than I did. He never said it out loud, but I could see it in the way he avoided looking people in the eye, the way he stayed in the kitchen instead of the counter, the way his laughter dimmed whenever a customer's voice dropped to a whisper. He was retreating, shrinking, and it terrified me. One night after closing, I found him sitting alone at a table, head in his hands. The cafe was dark except for the glow of the streetlights spilling through the window. "You can't keep doing this," I said gently. He didn't look up. "Doing what?" "Punishing yourself." His laugh was bitter, sharp. "Maybe I deserve it." I sat across from him, leaning forward. "Daniel, you're not the same person you were back then. You made mistakes, yes. But you're here now. You're trying. That matters." His eyes finally met mine, raw and searching. "And what if trying isn't enough?" I reached across the table, covering his hand with mine. "Then I'll carry the rest. For both of us." For the first time, he didn't pull away. The cafe became our battleground and our sanctuary. There were good days. Mornings where the lines stretched out the door, customers smiling, music playing softly in the background. Days where we worked like we used to in college kitchens, bumping shoulders, laughing at spilled milk, flirting with looks when no one was watching. But there were also bad days. Days when customers left without ordering after recognizing Daniel. Days when someone made a cruel joke loud enough for him to hear. Days when I found him in the storeroom, fists clenched, eyes red. I wanted to fight everyone who dared to judge us. But small towns don't work like that. You don't get to pick a fight with half the community and still keep your doors open. So we fought differently. We poured ourselves into the cafe. Every drink, every pastry, every smile was an act of defiance. If they wouldn't forgive us with words, maybe they would forgive us with flavors, with warmth, with the quiet reminder that we were human too. And slowly, painfully slowly, it started to work. One afternoon, Mrs. Patterson, who had been coming to the cafe for years, pulled me aside. "I don't approve of everything," she said bluntly, adjusting her oversized hat. "But your coffee is the best in town. And that boy of yours? He's polite. He's trying. That's worth something." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear it until I felt my throat tighten. When I told Daniel later, he laughed, shaking his head. Polite? Guess she didn't hear me swear at the espresso machine. But there was a softness in his smile, a light that hadn't been there in weeks. Of course, not everyone came around. One evening, just as we were locking up, a man barged in, reeking of beer, eyes glassy with anger. "You think you can just waltz back into this town, Hayes?" he slurred, pointing a finger at Daniel. "Like nothing happened? Like you didn't screw half of us over with your little deals?" I stepped forward, heart pounding. "That's enough. We're closed." But he ignored me, his rage locked on Daniel. "People like you don't change. You'll drag him down just like you did before." The words cut deep, not just for Daniel but for me, because they echoed the fear I hadn't dared admit. Before I could react, Daniel spoke. His voice was steady, though I could see the tremor in his hands. "You're right," he said. "I messed up. I hurt people, and I can't erase that. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm trying every day not to be. And if you can't see that, fine. But don't come into this place and spit on the only thing keeping me standing." The man stared, stunned, then muttered something under his breath before stumbling out. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. I turned to Daniel, my chest tight. "Why didn't you let me handle it?" "Because this is my mess," he said quietly. "And I'm tired of running." For the first time, I believed him. The turning point came weeks later, at the town's fall festival. Every year, Main Street transformed into a swirl of lights, music, and food stalls. It was the kind of event that made the town feel like a family, unless you were an outsider, unless you were us. I almost didn't want to go, but Daniel insisted. "If we're going to stay here, we can't hide. We show up, together." So we did. We set up a booth for the cafe, serving pumpkin spice lattes and cinnamon rolls. At first, people avoided us, their gazes sliding past as if we weren't there. But then a group of teenagers stopped by, filming on their phones, laughing as Daniel showed them how to make latte art. Their video went viral overnight, painting us not as villains, but as part of the town's charm. By the end of the night, our booth had a line. People were talking not about scandals, but about coffee, about recipes, about how maybe, just maybe, we weren't so different after all. And under the string lights, with music drifting through the air, Daniel leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "You realize this is the first time in years I've felt like I belong somewhere?" I smiled, my hand brushing his under the table. "Good, because you do. With me." We still had battles to fight. Gossip doesn't die easily, and scars don't fade overnight. But we had something stronger now. We had each other. And every time I saw Daniel smiling behind the counter, Every time I caught his hand brushing mine when no one was looking, every time the cafe filled with the smell of fresh coffee and laughter, I knew the truth. We weren't just surviving. We were building something. Something worth fighting for. The first time I saw Ethan really break down, was not during one of our college fights, not during the night he walked away from me, and not even during the storm of our reunion. It was here, on a quiet Sunday morning, in the middle of the cafe that had become our battlefield and our sanctuary. He was kneeling behind the counter, his hands gripping the edges of a crate of fresh beans, as if holding them together would hold his world together too. I found him like that, silent, shaking, his forehead pressed against his hands. The world outside buzzed with normalcy, but in here, Ethan was unraveling. "You can't do this to yourself," I said softly, my voice catching as though my chest had been squeezed in a vice. He looked up, eyes red, jaw trembling. "I thought I could handle it, Caleb. I thought if I stayed near you, worked beside you, maybe I could prove to myself that I'd changed. That I wasn't going to run again. And," I whispered, though I already knew. "And I'm terrified," he admitted. His voice cracked. "I'm terrified because every morning I wake up and I want this." He gestured around the cafe, but his gaze landed on me. "And I want you. And I don't know if I deserve either." I sank to my knees across from him, ignoring the sting of tile on bone. What if deserving isn't the point? What if love is messy, unfair, and comes back even when you've tried to bury it? Ethan's shoulders shook, his tears finally spilling. For once, he didn't try to hide them. And for once, I didn't try to be strong. I reached forward, wrapping my arms around him, pulling him against me as though we were the only two people left in the world. His breath hitched, hot against my neck, but he clung to me like a man who'd found a piece of land after drowning. We stayed like that until the morning light grew too insistent, until the sound of the front bell announced the first customer. And yet, even when we pulled apart, the distance didn't return. Something had cracked open, and we could never go back to pretending it wasn't there. The weeks that followed felt like walking on a tightrope strung between past mistakes and future hopes. Ethan and I worked side by side, sometimes in tense silence, sometimes in quiet companionship, and other times in bursts of laughter that surprised us both. He had his old charm, yes, but also a humility I hadn't seen before. He listened more, argued less, and when he messed up an order, he admitted it without trying to twist the story. I began to see not just the Ethan I had loved, but the Ethan who was fighting every day to be better. Still, the fear lingered. My heart had been scorched once, and though the scars had softened, they hadn't disappeared. At night, I lay awake wondering if giving him another chance was bravery or foolishness. One evening, as autumn painted the city gold and fire-colored leaves danced outside the cafe windows, Ethan and I closed up shop together. The air smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans, a warm cloak against the chill. He was wiping down the counter when he glanced at me and asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed? If I hadn't walked away back then?" I froze, the mop in my hands dripping water onto the floor. All the time. And I looked at him, really looked, at the boy I had once loved and the man he was becoming. And I think we would have burned out, because you weren't ready to love me the way I needed. Maybe I wasn't ready to be loved either. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. "But now," I said, setting the mop aside and stepping closer. "We have a chance, if we're willing to risk it." The silence that followed was charged, heavy, like the pause before lightning strikes. Then, slowly, Ethan reached out, his hand brushing mine. "I want to risk it," he whispered. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, then twined my fingers with his. For the first time in years, it felt like coming home. But love isn't just whispered confessions and stolen touches. It's the choice to keep showing up, especially when the world doesn't make it easy. One rainy afternoon, A local journalist came by to do a feature on the cafe. At first, it was flattering. The article would talk about how the shop had become a hub for the community, a space where people felt welcomed. But midway through the interview, the journalist leaned in and asked, "So, Caleb, what's it like working so closely with your ex? And is it true you two were more than just business partners in college?" The question sliced through me. Ethan stiffened across the room, pretending to rearrange pastries, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. I knew what that look meant. He feared I would shut down, deflect, deny us like I once did to protect myself. But I had changed, too. So I met the journalist's eyes and said, steady and clear, "Yes, Ethan and I were together. And what's it like? It's complicated and it's painful sometimes. But it's also proof that people can grow, that forgiveness can exist. And maybe, just maybe, that second chances are worth fighting for." Ethan froze, his eyes wide. For a second, the cafe felt suspended in time. And then, slowly, his expression softened into something fragile and luminous. When the journalist left, Ethan walked over, voice thick. "You didn't have to say that. You could have avoided it." "I didn't want to avoid it," I told him. "I'm tired of hiding who we are, who I am." That night, he kissed me for the first time since coming back. It wasn't desperate, or hurried, or tinged with regret. It was slow, reverent, filled with every word we hadn't said. And for once, I didn't hold back either. The cafe thrived. People came not just for the coffee, but for the warmth, the sense of belonging we had built. Ethan poured himself into every detail, designing seasonal drinks, chatting with customers, even teaching a group of local teens how to brew. I found myself smiling more, laughing louder, dreaming bigger. But the true test came when Ethan's past resurfaced. One evening, a man walked into the cafe, dripping with rain, his voice sharp as he called Ethan's name. I learned quickly that this was someone Ethan had wronged during the years he'd been away, someone he'd borrowed money from and never repaid. The confrontation was messy, heated, spilling truths into the air like spilled coffee on tile. My first instinct was to protect Ethan, to shield him. But I knew this wasn't mine to solve. This was Ethan's choice, run again or face it. And he faced it. Head high, voice steady, he apologized, offered repayment, and didn't flinch under the man's anger. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And when the man left, muttering but mollified, Ethan turned to me, eyes raw. "I don't want to be that person anymore," he whispered. "You're not," I said. "Not anymore." Months passed. Winter draped the city in white, and the cafe glowed like a beacon against the cold. One night, after closing, Ethan took my hand and led me outside. Snowflakes clung to his hair, glittering in the streetlights. "I used to think love was about perfection," he said, "about proving myself or being someone I wasn't. But now I think it's about this." He gestured to the cafe, to me. "Building something even when it's hard, choosing each other, even when it's messy." My throat tightened. "Ethan." He pressed a finger to my lips, then leaned in, his breath warm against the winter air. "So, Caleb, will you choose me? Not the boy I was, but the man I'm trying to become." Tears stung my eyes, blurring the lights of the city. "I already did," I whispered. And when he kissed me, the snow fell around us like confetti, as though the world itself was celebrating. The cafe became more than just a business. It became a home, a story, a second chance carved into brick and wood and steaming cups of coffee. Customers came and went, seasons changed, but one thing remained. The choice Ethan and I made, every single day, to stay. We weren't perfect. We argued over recipes, we got tired, we stumbled. But we also laughed, forgave, held each other through storms. We built a life not out of flawless moments, but out of real ones. And in the end, that was enough. Because sometimes love doesn't look like fireworks or fairy tales. Sometimes it looks like two men standing in the quiet glow of a cafe, hands intertwined, hearts steady, ready to face the world, together. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.